Welcome. I hope that all of you that are joining us have a place to sit and you're comfortable because we're delighted that you're here. Welcome to the celebration of Bishop John McKee Sloan, better known as Key. And we are going to celebrate his ministry today across our diocese. And of course, we're sad because we are not all together in one room or in one pasture, because what Key really wanted was a pasture party. And so we're going to try our best to give him maybe the best and the worst of what a pasture party would be. First, I want to take a moment to say thank you to all those who've made this possible. There are many lights on us and there's much virtual activity, and that's giving us a chance to be together, and so we're grateful for that. And so thank you to all those that have worked really hard to make that happen. This is only, though, one of the many ways that we are celebrating the ministry of Key Sloan, and I want to tell you about another one. If you go actually to dioala.org, thank you, Key, you'll be able to find a number of ways that you can participate in celebrating his ministry among us for these last 12 years or more. But thanking Key is not all we want to do. We also want to thank Key's family. And believe it or not, they are seated. I don't think we got a camera on them, and they don't want a camera on them. They are seated right here below us on the stage, and so I have Mary Nell, and I also have McKee, and then I have Miss Tina, and I'm just saying thank you. Thank you for sharing your dad and your husband with us, but also thank you for all the ministry that you've done these last many years and for being such a part of the Diocese of Alabama and the family of the Diocese of Alabama. And we know you're not going anywhere. You're always going to be part of it, but we do appreciate all that you have done. And so we thank you. So now I guess I would like to introduce the man of the hour, Bishop Key Sloan, who I'm going to let him come out here and sit down, who has been with us as bishop for the last 12 years or so. And he can tell you the exact dates, but I can't. And I want to take a moment to tell him thank you from me. Thank you for welcoming me into this ministry called being a bishop, which I know nothing about. Thank you for teaching me as much as you can in a pandemic, and for loving me through all of it, because it has been a wild ride these last 11 months. And I'm looking forward to whatever time we have left, and I want you to keep your cell phone in your jacket pocket, and I'll call you. But you're supposed to sit right there, and then I'm going to introduce now the Reverend David McGinnis, who is dressed pretty much like a preacher today. David, as we all know, is a great and wonderful friend of Key's and has been for many years. And he was a lawyer at one point in Key's church in Huntsville, and somehow he got talked into thinking about a call to priesthood, and he ended up in seminary. And that was a really good idea. And the Reverend David McGinnis is the rector of Christ Church and has been there for, the last 16 years or so. And so David is going to lead us in this celebration today, and I wouldn't call him the master of ceremonies. I think I would rather call him the master of mischief. And so without further ado, here is David.
Thank you, Bishop G. Before we get started, let me apologize for having to wear this. I have a condition that makes it very sensitive to these lights, and so my wife bought me this eye patch to try tonight. And I figured Key could either call me Dead-Eye Dave or maybe even Mad-Eye McGinnis. I kind of like that one.
Mad-Eye, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't remember all the details. I'm sure you could tell this better than I can, but I remember the gist of it. It was the service when you became our bishop. And we were all seated in the cathedral inside, and you were outside. And you took that crooked stick that all bishops have, and you thrust it at the door like a battering ram, 3 echoing knocks. And a voice inside said, "Who wants to enter?" And you said something like, "The Right Reverend John McKee Sloan, Bishop something of Alabama." And nothing happened. Nobody opened the door. And so you took that crooked stick and you bashed it into the door again, 3 big booming knocks. And again, a voice asked who wanted to enter, and you said something like, "The Right Reverend John McKee Sloan, duly elected Bishop of Alabama." And nothing happened. The door didn't open again. The key was still outside. So once again, he took that crooked stick and he bashed it into the door. And this time, when the voice asked who wanted to enter, in a humble way, he said, "I am Key, a child of God." And the door opened, and Key entered, and that's how he began his latest ministry as our bishop. And like all his other ministries, he led us as a humble child of God. He never tried to use that big heavy cross and that giant ring and that ridiculous looking hat to try to intimidate us. He never used his authority like that crooked stick to poke at us or bash us or try to make us feel ashamed. He led us mainly by telling stories. He told stories about himself, told stories about the people he knew, and in those stories, we saw the grace and mercy of God, and we got glimpses of the kingdom of God. And so now he's going to hang up that crooked stick and pass this authority on to Bishop G. And we thought it would be a fun way to celebrate by, instead of having you tell stories about others, we would have them tell stories about you, people who have known you. Some of these people are actually in the stories that you've told, and now they get their turn. So we invite you to listen, and we might talk about some of them. But the first couple of stories are by people who've known you longer than anyone else. So the first one is from your own big brother, Crofton Sloan.
I'm Crofton Sloan, Key's older brother. I'm proud and humbled and happy to join in the celebration of Key's long ministry. Key and I and our 2 sisters grew up on the southern edge of Vicksburg, Mississippi, just inside the city limits at that time. We could walk out the back door, across the backyard, down a steep ravine, and be in a heavily wooded wilderness to us. We spent a lot of time playing in streams and building forts, digging caves in the dirt banks, going to the pond and fishing, and in the appropriate season playing football and baseball with some of the neighborhood kids out in the front yard. Now, when I was 8, Key was 5, and at that time I didn't look up to him like I do now. And I was largely unaware. But in retrospect, it was obvious even then that Key was a kind, gentle, considerate, compassionate person with his fellow pilgrims and all of God's creation, just like today. And so I'm proud of you, Key. Congratulations. I love you.
So recently at a celebration, I had my big brother talk about me. He didn't say any of those nice things. So you know you're getting old, because when you get old, people talk about how good you look. Oh, you look good, yeah. Not to be outdone, we've heard from your big brother. Now let's hear from your big sister. Here's Becky Sloan.
Hey, Key. I'm Becky. Key's my little brother. One of the first memories I have about Key was his fascination with a superhero named Popeye the Sailor Man. Key would sit in front of the television, right up on the screen, with his can of spinach right beside him. For the longest time, he didn't go anywhere without that can of spinach. In fact, he has a can of spinach in his office that his son McKee gave him. I feel like Key and Popeye have a lot in common. They both pull for the underdog, have great compassion, and seem to find solutions to problems that seem almost unsurmountable. We all want to be superheroes, but we must be what God has called us to be. And Key has done an exceptional job at doing that very gracefully. We've been through times with Key where he has shown courage and hope and wisdom and love. As Grandpa would say, bully for you, Key.
One of the things that Key talks about a lot in his stories is going fishing. I think one of the reasons that we have a pond here at Bethany Village that we call Sloan Lake is because Key felt like everybody ought to know the joy of fishing. And one of the childhood friends that did a lot of fishing with Key apparently was Clifton McInnes. One of us doesn't know how to spell his last name, but here's Cliff.
Key, I'm sorry that this virus has made it so that I'm not going to be able to be there with you in person on your occasion of your retirement, but I know it's going to be a joyous celebration, as it should. I was asked to make some sort of a statement, whether humorous or serious or whatever, and knowing that there were probably going to be a good many people who were going to talk about your camp days, I thought maybe I'd go back a little bit further and give some people some backstory to a statement that you used to make that I imagine you still do from time to time. During the spring of the year that we got our driver's licenses, we used to like to go fishing on a little lake, or really it was a pond that one of the parishioners owned, and we always try to get there just at daybreak, but it was hard to do because the place was pretty far out in the county. And so this one weekend we came up with the idea, well, we'll just go camping, and then we'll be right there at the pond as the sun rises, because of course we were positive that was when the fish would bite. And Key, as best I remember, talked his dad into letting us take his Willis Jeep out there to camp. And as you might know, places around Vicksburg are hilly, so it's hard to find a flat area to set up a camp, but we found one in a field fairly close to the little pond, and we had heard, I think in fact Key's father had even told us that afternoon that there was a chance that it was going to rain that evening or that night, and of course we ignored that. And so we camped, and we were all looking forward to getting up the next morning, having 5 mornings fishing, catching catching a lot of fish, more fish than we'd ever caught. But as it turned out, it did rain. In fact, there was a little tornado that went not too far to the south of the place where we had set up camp. So we got a torrential rain and woke up sometime in the morning finding that everything in that campsite was just soaking wet. And so there we were in the dark, struggling, trying to get everything together and get as much water wrung out of it as possible before we put it into that Jeep. And when we finally got as much water as we could out of everything and got into the Jeep ourselves, I can remember Key looking over at me and giving me that little sort of a face he comes up with is halfway between a question and a very profound statement. That sort of look, and asking me the question that I've heard him ask, and I'm sure that you may have too, on several occasions. Are we having fun yet? Key, I hope you're having fun this evening, and I hope to see you soon. Christ peace, brother.
So Cliff's story starts sort of a theme that gets repeated through several of these stories. And that theme was communicated to me when I was a co-director with Key of Special Session. He would say, don't ruin it by over-planning it, right? And so we continue now with Sister Fran, who has a story about Key's unwillingness to plan ahead. Fran.
Hey Key, happy retirement. Wish we could be there to help you celebrate. I want to share a story about Key growing up. Many of you might not know that Key used to have a little bit of a tendency to be a procrastinator. He would have a paper due or test due or flashcards due, and frequently he would wait until the night of or the morning of and get it done. And as usual, it would turn out fine for him. Life went on. He was pretty steady about it. But I thought he was bonkers. I thought surely by the time he gets to college, he will outgrow this and not be such a procrastinator. So in my freshman year, I'm struggling a bit in English, and I have a paper due in a week. Nothing's working out for me with it. So I called Key out of desperation. I said, Key, you've got to come help me. I can't get it done. Nothing's working. So Key, in his usual fashion, probably chuckled on the other end of the phone and said, sure, come over tomorrow night around 8 o'clock and I'll help you work on it. As you've picked up, I wasn't a procrastinator, and I thought he was totally bonkers. I thought, well, I can't wait till the very last minute to work on it. So the next day I do show up at his apartment at 7:30, of course, and we meet, we conquered, we wrote, he wrote. I think I even made an A on the paper, and life rolled along until probably the next time I was under pressure. But I realized then that Key didn't really have a cloud over his head. It was probably more of a blanket that only God can give him, a blanket that gave him strength and courage and reminded him of who's in control. So thank you, Key, for always being that steady presence in my life. Thank you for always being willing to help me out. And I hope that your retirement is wonderful and relaxing, and all those things that are on your to-do list that you and Tom have put, I hope you get them done whenever you want to get them done. Love you, Key. Bye.
When Key came to be our rector in Huntsville in 1993, he plotted a way to get rid of me, and he finally succeeded by taking me to the bishop and getting me accepted for ordination and sending me off to Sewanee for seminary. Key is the priest who shepherded me through this process. And when I got to Sewanee, I met the assistant chaplain of the great big student chapel there. And she turned out to be an old friend of my friend. She turned out to be an old friend of Key's, and her name is Anwin Myers.
Hi, Key. Ka-diddle-diddle-diddle-diddle. I am so honored to be a part of this virtual celebration of your years in ministry as Bishop of the Diocese of Alabama. I'm just sorry that the diocese and your family and friends and I can't gather in person to celebrate what I know has been a long and fruitful ministry. You and I, buddy, go way back, 47 years, almost half a century. You were 18, I was 19 when we first met. We both had been called to serve that summer of 1973 as members of the permanent staff at Camp Bratton Green in the Diocese of Mississippi. Those 2 years that we spent together doing that, I remember you and I had many conversations about the ordained ministry, and you often expressed a feeling that God was calling you to that. Unfortunately, I was jealous because I didn't have that option at that time. But God did wonders. You were ordained, and 3 years after your ordination, you came to preach at my ordination to the priesthood at St. John's Episcopal Church in Pascagoula, Mississippi. They are still talking about that sermon. What a gifted preacher you are. In between that time and now, you and I have shared, though we've been in different places, we've shared in many different levels. We have done funerals together. We've done weddings together. We've done ordinations together. And a few consecrations. All along the way, whenever I've seen you, I'm always so glad to call you friend, to call you fellow presbyter, and to know that you are there. As you prepare to step into this time of retirement, I can only tell you that it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And I wish you and your family the very best as you enter this time. And may God continue to bless you as he has certainly blessed me with the gift of your friendship and your companionship. Thanks be to God.
I preached at her ordination, and then that was back when I wrote sermons down. And then, I don't know how many, 10, 12 years went by, and I basically used the same sermon to preach at your ordination about the Wizard of Oz.
So, you want to tell them what you did to her, though, when she told you she did not want a sermon about women's ordination?
Anwen was the first woman to be ordained in Mississippi, and it was a big deal. Bishop Gray told Anwen to tell me, don't make this about her being a woman. And I always did what the bishop told me to do. So as it happens, Anwen is like 5'1" or something. So I was in the pulpit, I was preaching, and I said something like, you can all tell that this is a different kind of ordination, that this would be a very different thing for the Diocese of Mississippi. Just by accident of her birth, that there may be some people that wouldn't want her to be ordained, and I kind of went on and on and on about that. And I looked down at Bishop Gray, who was sitting on the floor down on the floor of the nave, and he was not burdened with hair up here, and I saw that his scalp was just beet red. He was so angry. And so I went on for a little bit, and then finally said, so what if she's short? And everybody laughed, and so that was kind of a cool moment. And Bishop Gray forgave me happily.
And part of my job at the chapel there was dealing with vestments, and we really did have 3 sets of everything. So there was like Tom Ward was your size, so we had like really long stoles for him, and then Chris was about my size, so we had like, regular people's stuff, and then we had this stuff for Anwen that looked, like child size stuff, and woe be unto the sacristan that got them mixed up, because if Anwen's stole hung around Tom's neck, it'd come to about here, I think. So you've soaked up all of this sweetness and all of this nice stuff, and so I've decided to ruin it now by including a video from somebody I told you he's going to get you into trouble, Key. Here is the Reverend Kyle Bennett.
Well, can count on him not to be sweet.
So we want to talk about Key Sloan. Congratulations. Key, you've earned it. You earned it a long time ago. I first met Key in 1977 at a place called Camp Bratton Green in Way, Mississippi. I'm here right now. And I wanted to come here to honor this man by coming to this special place and actually to show you a picture of Key, what he looked like back then. And I brought down a picture that hangs in the wall of this place we call the Big House. And yes, that is the most hot and sexy Key Sloan that y'all call the Right Reverend Key Sloan. Oh, and not to be outdone,
That's Anwin. Yeah.
Anwin Hawkins Myers, who I believe is also on this day of celebration. She was there as well. And since 1977, Key has been a part of my life. Sometimes in person, sometimes far away. He was at the first camp sessions where I decided that this God and Jesus thing was a pretty important way to look at life. Different than the way I learned in Columbus at church. Because this God was different. This God was somehow bigger. Not just because of the voice that was proclaiming it, but this God was bigger in so many ways because this God didn't seem to have boundaries. And somehow that appealed to me. And Key gave me that image, and because it seemed like wherever Key was, there'd be one of these. And I was told I can't cuss, I can't smoke, I mustn't touch it. You have to ask Key what that is. So I did decide, though, that this is Key's going away party. I would try a little of this. As a Maker and Jack Daniels fan myself, this stuff is crap. But so many stories were told and done around sharing one of these. Excuse me. I was a comic book kid and youth growing up, and my favorite hero is the Silver Surfer. Key showed me that the Silver Surfer first appeared in Fantastic Four 48 and 49 and 50. Key, if you had kept those copies pristine, you'd be making more money off those comics than they're going to give you for retiring from the bishop thing. Key would lead the chant when there was a particular camper who was very, very good at picking his nose. And all of a sudden you would hear from Key and it would go around like a baseball chant. Get it, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. Key taught me the importance of a bandana. Key taught me the importance of a good round of disc golf. In fact, Key started and created the first public and private disc golf course here in the state of Mississippi.
I hope that's tea.
I didn't drink this stuff. He still holds the course record at 21 under. Never will be beat.
That's probably not tea.
He opened the bottle. He opened the bottle.
He called me many things.
He tore the...
He calls me in this book, Beulah, the young upstart. He used to call me the worthy opponent. When he hired me in Huntsville, he called me the troubler of Israel. I like to be called Tina's first love. And though she settled for you, Key, y'all make a great couple and made some wonderful kids. Key, I owe you my life. I owe you everything that I am, good and bad. I hope you take some time and go fishing. You've been pecked to death by ducks for a long time, and you've earned it. Every story I think that any of us would tell about Key would be about relationships, and the ones that start with him and go on to other people. It's so true in my life. From my closest friends, my wife, people I know well because of Key. And it wasn't so much that Key was a cult of personality, but enabler of possibilities. So I think all of us should raise a glass of whatever, probably not this stuff, and give you a virtual hug, Key, because we love you.
That's got to be
You can always come by and see me, and I'll even get you one of these. Bye-bye. I can't finish it. I can't finish it.
Maybe it was apple juice.
So, Bishop G mentioned at the start of this that you can still go to dioala.org and see how you can participate in saying goodbye to Key. And I would invite you that while you are at dioala.org, you click on the tab that says Who We Are, and go to the next tab that says Our Ministries, and check out our wonderful recovery ministries. I just think this would be a great time to be able to do that. Lord, I'd hate to see him with a bottle of something he actually liked. I mean, wow.
But that is the essence of Kyle Bennett right there. He's been that way since 1977.
At least. Oh, before that. At least. Okay, when I met Key, he had two jobs. He was the chaplain on the campus of Ole Miss, which for a Mississippi State grad must have been like that poor kosher prodigal son having to feed the pigs. And his other job was the assistant priest at St. Peter's in Oxford. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
That's right.
And your boss at that time, who later became a bishop, it became Bishop of Mississippi, one of the many Bishop Duncan Grays. But anyway, his name was Duncan Gray, and we have a video from him.
I first met Key Sloan when he was a tall, lanky teenager serving as a counselor at Camp Bratton Green, and I saw greatness even in those wonderfully innocent times. Key and I were colleagues as priests in the Diocese of Mississippi, and one of the things I remember well was his passion for poker games at clergy conference. Key, you instilled and inspired much in my soul in those days. Key and I worked together as clergy in Oxford, Mississippi. I serve as rector and Key as chaplain to the Episcopal students at Ole Miss. And more than once, as we would process down the aisle, knowing that he was on as preacher, but always wanting to goose me a bit, to loosen me up, would say to me about halfway down the aisle, "Now, you're preaching today, right?" And he always got me. It was an April Fool's joke that I always fell for. One of the things I remember vividly about Key's time was as chaplain was his deep passion for what the students were going through. And after watching registration in those pre-digital days, Key wrote a little bit, reflecting on the experience, and I remember it well. He said, "Watching students go through registration, I'm reminded of what hell must look like, where everyone wants to know your name and nobody wants to know you." Such was his insight into that time in our lives. Key, of course, was very active in special sessions, product of which he planted in the Diocese of Alabama. But Key was also very creative about what he did and spent a lot of time thinking of new ways to take this experience and offer something dramatically different to these young people. Once he decided it would be a great idea to take these young people to a baseball game, a minor league baseball game just down the road in Jackson, Mississippi. It was a great moment until Key began to count the kids getting ready to leave and realized he was short a few. Searched the baseball stadium and none were there. He had to get on the phone and call his bishop and say, I think we've lost some children. Fortunately, they were found at the bus station and all was forgiven. It wasn't the last time that Key's creativity and love for doing something for others got him into a bit of trouble. When Key was elected bishop, there were many people excited about so many things. But for me, the most important thing is when he came to the House of Bishops, suddenly there was a poker game and all was right with the world. Key, I will witness to you the fact that there is life on the other side of retirement. Welcome, brother. I look forward to seeing you in these green pastures. God bless you.
Well, not to contradict a bishop, but the way I heard it, it was just one camper who got away. His name was Walter.
Walter Joyner.
And I wasn't going to say his last name on national television, but okay. Walter Joyner. He was mad because he was ready to wrap up his summer romance and go back to his original girlfriend, and she wasn't having it.
Right.
And so he disappeared, and like the bishop said, you eventually found him. They called from the bus station, and you got him back. The rest of the story is, at the end of camp, it got to be the closing Eucharist, and Key was preaching this impassioned sermon on nobody being excluded from the kingdom of God. Nobody should be excluded from the kingdom of God. And he called out several people that shouldn't be excluded from the kingdom of God, and the campers all said, what about Walter? So, Key, should Walter be excluded from the kingdom of God?
No. My reaction when one camper said, what about Walter? And I thought, oh, I hate it when people preach to me. No, of course, we can't kick Walter out of the family of God.
The other thing I would say about Duncan's presentation is he thought that you knew you were preaching and were just joking. I submit that probably you had no idea who was preaching and you just made up the sermon on the way down the aisle.
Well, you have to find out what the lessons are.
He did bring up special session at Bratton Green in Mississippi, which had a profound effect on your life, and you met several people there and crossed paths with several people there. The next presenter is somebody I don't know. I can't say much about him, but from seeing the video, I assume he was a fellow clergy at special session and maybe even was something of a mentor at some time. This is a video from the Reverend Ralph Kelly.
Hello, Key. This is Ralph Kelly from the long distant past. I remember you so well, meeting you for the first time many years ago when I think it was 1972 or maybe later. You were a lanky teenager, as thin as I recall back then, but the last time I saw you, you had passed that stage of your life. Well, I'm supposed to talk to you about now after you've done all these years and become a wonderful and loving and gracious member of the church and the bishop of Alabama, and how lucky those people have been to have you there. I'm talking about retirement. Well, I've been retired now for many years, 20 some odd, I think. And anyway, it is a terrible life. I want you to know, right now, as you can see behind me, I'm suffering really, really terribly here as I'm on the east coast of Florida, in the sunshine, looking out over the Atlantic Ocean. Here a month here, and then my partner, well, she'll go ski in Maine for 3 months after this. I will have thawed before then, and so there's snow and skiing for 3 months following this 1 month stint here. So retirement is really a terrible thing to do. So I know that you will always be active, and I hope that you and Tina will have some time to do those things that you've always wanted to do, to be in the world where you want to be, and to see those people and perhaps children and grandchildren in ways that you've not had time with them before. So my brother, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for the times that we've had together and the many good conversations. One of the last ones I really recall was at a special session. We were sitting on a bench outside the dining hall at Camp Bratton Green, looking over that wonderful lake. And we were talking, and you were saying someday that I would be a bishop, and I said, oh no, not I. God is too wise for that. But you will be. And in all of that, I knew that God had special things for you way beyond my own ken and my abilities. And I am so delighted that you have served this time, and here you are getting ready to retire. So may you not just retire, but just do this to rebuild yourself and to create a different and new life in the days and years coming forward. And may you and Tina follow with God's blessings. Certainly my love and my hopes and for you and for what you might find in the ways of the days ahead that will be great for you and fun for you and even more life-giving. Thank you ever so much for your friendship, and I will follow you still. Thank you so much, Key, for your friendship, your brotherhood, and for your love and service to the church and to God's people. Thank you, and amen.
Amen.
So you want to tell me about him?
Ralph Kelly was the director of the first special. He was on staff of the first special session that I did in 1971. The director was a large, well-rounded guy with gray curly hair, and he was kind of scary.
It's prerequisite, isn't it?
I guess. But Ralph was approachable, and he and I have been good friends for an awfully long time. It was great to see him. That's great.
We've heard now about special session, and one of the things that hasn't been mentioned yet, but I find absolutely special about special session, is that the counselors, by and large, are young people. They are people in high school. Some of them stick with us through college. Some of them stick with us until they become the director. But we have not emphasized enough how important this ministry is to our young people who act as counselors. And so the next video is from somebody who was a young person at a special session in Bratton Green, and his name is Roger Hutchison.
Key Sloan, congratulations, my friend. This is Roger Hutchison coming to you from Houston, Texas, where I serve as the Director for Christian Formation and Parish Life at Palmer Memorial Episcopal Church. I want to say thank you for so many things, but I just have a couple of minutes to do so. So hopefully I'll get to say thank you in person before too long. This is going to make you maybe feel like an old man, but I hope it makes you feel like a happy old man. I'm going to be 48 years old the day after Christmas. You and I, we first crossed paths when I was 16 years old, over 30 years ago. You took me under wing and you invited me to be a part of a special session at Camp Bratton Green. And that experience changed my life forever. You taught me what neurodiversity is. You taught me what beauty is. You taught me that the human face is beautiful in all its forms and shapes and colors. You taught me that every human being is made in the image of God. And you taught me that you can dance from a wheelchair. I experienced joy when I was at special session, almost unlike anything that I have experienced since then. And I will never forget it. You inspired me to continue to work in the church. It's been easy at times, it's been really difficult at times, but it has been an amazing life. I've worked with children and youth and adults. I currently serve as someone who oversees lifelong formation. I also serve as the chair of Forma, of the Forma Council. And Forma, as you know, is the network for Christian educators across the United States and in other parts of the world. You helped me become the Christian educator I am today. You helped me become the man I am today. And I thank you. And as you know, I'm a writer as well. I love to write. I'm a storyteller. I'm an artist. And so much of that is because of you. I'm grateful for you, Key. And my prayer is that you are able to rest and write and read and breathe deeply in the knowledge that you have done a good job. And thank you for saying yes to God's call in your life, because you have changed and touched and inspired so many of us. And for that, I give thanks. I send you so much love, my friend. Peace.
So what'd you think of that?
His hair used to be black. He was a sweet kid who came to camp, and you could just tell, I mean, he was scared like a lot of people who come to special session, but you could just tell he had a heart for that kind of thing and that he was going to do very well. I'm so glad that y'all included him in this. That's wonderful. Thanks.
Well, I of course didn't know him because I didn't do special session in Mississippi, but I figured you'd tell me if he was a good kid or a knucklehead, right?
Well, some of both, like the rest of us.
So we've heard a lot from a lot of people in Mississippi, but Key didn't stay in Mississippi, obviously. We rescued him from having to be the chaplain at Ole Miss. We brought him to Huntsville, Alabama, to St. Thomas. There was a person on the search committee who had her leg in a cast, a big cast. I don't know if you remember this. Tanya, you remember this? And y'all came and visit. And I told you that the test was if you could heal her leg, we'd hire you, right?
Is she going to tell the story of the healing?
Do what?
Is she going to tell the story of how I healed her leg?
No. I don't even remember who it was, actually. But in any event, Key came and was immediately loved and was popular. And one of the first friends he made was a woman named Jeannie Randall. Let's hear from Jeannie.
I met Keith Sloan in August of 2003. And my first introduction to him was during the first service he did at St. Thomas. Now, one of the wardens had wanted all of us to wear "Hello, my name is" tags. Even wanted us to wear them on our choir robes. And I thought it was a really dumb idea. I mean, those peel and stick labels hardly adhere to anything smooth, much less a choir surplice. I am kind of a rule abider, though, at least in principle. So that morning, instead of a crumpled sticker, I wrote "Hello, my name is" in the palm of my hand so that he could read it as he gave me the communion wafer. Now, I tell you, Key did not miss a beat. He gave me the bread and merely said, "Oh, I've heard about you." The next time we met was in a hospital waiting room. A friend and member of Key's new parish had just undergone extensive cancer surgery. It was an emergency. And two of us from St. Thomas had sat up all night waiting to hear from the surgeon. I had called Key in the middle of the night on his second week at St. Thomas, and I asked him to come. He was no, and my friend Mary Elizabeth and I, we really didn't know what to expect. Key showed up early that Saturday morning. Our friend had just come out of surgery, and the doctor had told us that if she didn't begin chemotherapy and respond that day, that she was not going to make it. So when I saw Key in the waiting room, I reintroduced myself to him and said, come on. She's just gotten out of surgery. You can see her before they take her to ICU, and you can say a prayer. But Key, in that gentle voice that we've all come to love, said, "Hey, wait a minute. You two sit down." And then he pulled a brown sack out of his pocket and offered us a Hershey's bar and said, "How are you?" It was the beginning of a long friendship. He definitely has his pastoral side, and we all know that he can preach and tell a story. But here are some things maybe all of you don't know. He can juggle. He's an expert whistler. I think he's a disc golf champion as well. He's also a very capable veterinary assistant. And one of my favorite things about him is that he's a daddy that doesn't mind walking around his neighborhood dressed as Aslan the lion as he takes his little girl trick-or-treating. He also speaks Spanish. Ask him sometime to tell you the story of translating for a nurse in Honduras. He'll probably remember having some trouble with the finer points of the word discharge in Spanish. Could it be explosion? One of my favorite memories is in Delicias del Norte when Key was celebrating the Eucharist in Spanish. It was early years, and I was just learning the language myself, and had felt comfortable enough to be seated in the middle of a row of village women. I was kind of feeling proud of myself that I was actually understanding some of what Key was saying. Of course, he does talk slowly like we in the South do, so it was a little easier. We got to the part of the Lord's Prayer, and I was following along fairly well, and we got to a part, and I thought, did I just hear that? And the ladies around me began to giggle, and I thought, oh, and I looked at them and said, did he say pescado? And they all giggled because Key had just asked God to forgive us our fish. Pescado, not pecado. My friend Key and his wife and children, whom I love, have been some of the best part of the last 25 years, and I'm a better person for having them in my life. Love you, Key.
Well, I have a couple of things to say about that. First of all, she's off by 10 years. I figure she doesn't want people to know how old she is, maybe, and so she took 10 years off it. It was 1993, Jeannie, when you met Key, because that's when he came to Huntsville. The other thing I would vehemently deny is that it was the warden's idea to have those lousy name tags. That was due to a failure to communicate from you. I think it was one of the engineers who said, would it be helpful if we wore name tags? And you, trying to not say no to anything because you were brand new, said, well, yeah, that might be helpful. And next thing we knew it, here they came. The wardens were not happy about that at all.
Well, that didn't last long.
No. Thankfully, you finally owned up to the fact that you hated them too, and we got rid of them. Jeannie did mention Honduras. We had a long history of medical missions and other missions to Honduras before you came, and so one of the things that originally attracted to us to you on your resume or clerical, whatever the magic computer thing was that you mentioned your experience in Honduras, and so we thought that would allow us to continue the long history of our medical missions to Honduras. And she also mentioned that you were a capable veterinary assistant, because we not only sent our parishioners on these medical missions, but we would enlist the help of professionals, doctors and dentists, and one veterinarian whose name was Wilson McManus. And Wilson has a video.
I wanted to share some stories about our time in Honduras and our medical mission trips that I participated in. I was alumni. I'm an alumni of the first 8 Honduras mission trips in a time period running from 1995 to 2002. But anyway, I got recruited to go on as a veterinarian on the medical mission trip to Honduras by Rob and Polly Robb. And they needed a veterinarian to go on the trip, and they asked if I'd be willing to go. And so I started going. I went the first year on the trip, and Key was not able to attend that year. And when I worked in Honduras on the animals, we usually spent 3, 4, 5 days working there in a village in Delicias del Norte. And a local farmer helped me. And I didn't speak Spanish, and I could speak animal, and that was about it. But the next year, the head of the guy that was the head of the mission trip, the Jefe is what we called him, he came to me and he said, well, the priest really wants to work with you we called it the vet shack, which was basically a tree out in the middle of the village that sometimes had leaves on it to protect us from the sun. But basically he wanted to work in the vet shack. And I did not know Key. And I said, well, I could just see a priest out there, and it's kind of like, it's like cowboy times. It's like the Wild West, what we were doing, working on cows and horses and pigs and a whole lot of dogs. And I said, well, I don't know if he'll fit in, but he really wants to work with a veterinarian. He wants to work with a veterinarian. I said, well, and he said, he speaks Spanish. And I said, well, okay, well, it's fine with me. If it's good with him, it's good with me. And so that year I started working with Key. And we had a great time in the vet shack. And Key, I know that you probably remember as many stories or more than I do, but I can remember a couple of them that really always make me laugh. And one of them is, I guess, the year we were working with Carter Zorn. Carter was there, a college student that was wanting to go to veterinary school, went with me 3 years, but you and I and Carter had been working there in the vet shack, and the Bishop of Honduras and his wife, I believe her name was Diana, but we called her Lady Di. They would visit the village every year and bless the mission trip and give moral support and be there for a while. And their entourage was leaving the village, and you and I and Carter were sitting on these 5-gallon buckets that we carried all our supplies in, but also doubled up as our chairs. And so we were sitting around, hanging around there and watching all of them leave, and the bishop is leaving, and I kind of smarted off, and I said, well, Key, when are you going to be bishop? And you said, oh, never, I'm not bishop material. And I said, well, Key, I said, I've been watching my industry, the veterinary industry, and I see these veterinarians that are retiring and these office holders and people that are leaders in the veterinary industry. I see them leaving, and I said, well, you know, Key, in my business, these people are getting older and leaving, and I kind of got the idea that if you can hang out around long enough, eventually they're going to come around to you wanting to be bishop, and you go, oh no, I'm never going to be bishop, never going to be bishop. And so, sure, in the world, you know, you don't ever say never, because the Lord's got a different plan, but it made me so happy when you became bishop, is that I could remember when you said I would never be a bishop, or I wasn't bishop material. And I guess because you know, you were probably the best choice, because you never thought you wanted to be bishop, or what, never would be bishop. But anyway, I've always been proud of that. There are many, many stories that I could share about our mission trips and our trips and things we did and the experiences we had, but I wouldn't trade them for anything in the world. And you know, I feel, looking back on my life, that I was probably felt the most useful and most engaged at those times, because it was just doing God's work and doing things that you love to do, taking care of animals and helping animals. And I know how much you love your own pets, just like, you know, I do. So anyway, good luck to you, and I know I'll hopefully see more of you. And congratulations, and I'm glad to see that you waited around long enough to become the bishop. Anyway, thanks. Bye-bye.
Can I tell a quick story?
Yeah, please do.
As Wilson said, there are hundreds of stories to tell about the vet shack, and some of them should not be told. The fellow that helped him the first year before I came was Miguel, and he was tall and upright and very strong, hard-working man. We had a horse that came into the village. Someone brought a bunch of horses for them to get vaccinated. And there was one stallion who was not very well behaved, and he hadn't been handled all that much, and he was just difficult. He was hard to deal with. And horses can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing, so I stayed way back. My job was to hold the syringes so that Wilson could take one and pop the animal and take the other one. Miguel got this horse and went and petted him by the ear and talked to him, and real quickly put his finger and his thumb inside the horse's nose and clamped onto it. And the horse was just as still as a statue. And Wilson said, okay, come on. And I said, is it safe? Is he going to, you know, step on me or something? And Wilson said, oh, Key. What do you say, Keister? Oh, Keister. He ain't going nowhere without his nose.
Wilson also told the story about the time you went on a hike and met a man with a gun on his hip. Mm-hmm. And you were trying to basically talk your way out of any trouble, and somehow told the man that you were from Alabama.
We were walking, and this guy and somebody else were coming toward us, and we saw that he had a gun in his the waistband of his pants. And people from the United States are not always very welcome. There are some rough people, and so it was kind of a scary thing. We didn't want to just turn around, so we walked toward them. And the first exchange was kind of difficult, and he asked us where we're from. And I said, Los Estados Unidos, United States. He said, yes, which state? And I said, Alabama. And he said, Alabama, Forrest Gump. And we were okay, Forrest Gump.
So they were saved by Forrest Gump and wound up ministering to the man's cattle and
yes.
Got a beer for it, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. The other great ministry that's been mentioned several times, besides the Honduras trips, is of course starting special session here in the Diocese of Alabama. Key talked about it in sermons so much about Bratton Green that somebody finally said, when are you going to do it here? So Key started it here, I think, when I was in seminary. So I was not at the first couple of sessions, but as soon as he could get me to come, It's one of the early sessions, and I don't want to say that we didn't know what we were doing, but we didn't know what we were doing. And
Takes all the fun out of it if you know what you're doing.
Key had decided that, like regular summer camps, we should have a theme. We should have a camp theme. And he thought this camp theme this year ought to be about Harry Potter. Harry Potter is very popular. I mean, that'd be great. We'd do the whole thing about Harry Potter. And so he asked me to learn the Harry Potter theme song on the guitar and to write words to it so that we could all sing along. So I did. And we put the words up on the board, and I played the guitar, and nobody ever sang it. And there's several reasons for that. First of all, most of our campers don't read. And second, I don't know if you're familiar with the Harry Potter theme song, but it's not exactly a rousing sing-along kind of song. And thirdly, and maybe most importantly, most of our campers had no idea who Harry Potter was. And the more Key tried to explain it, the less interested they got about that. And it all came to a head at the kickball game. So in the Harry Potter movies, one of the features of Hogwarts, where they go to school, is that if you get on a staircase, it's liable to change directions while you're on the staircase and lead you in a different direction. And Key thought that we could kind of do the same thing in the kickball game if every once in a while we'd blow the whistle and announce that you had to run in a different direction on the base paths. Like instead of running to first base, second, third, maybe you'd run to third, second, and first, and so forth. So the first time we tried it, Key blew a whistle and announced that now we were going to run from third to second to first. You know, we were going to run clockwise instead of counter. Is that right? Have I got that right? Instead of counterclockwise. Well, we had some athletic campers that knew very well how to play kickball, by God, and they knew that you weren't supposed to run in that direction. And we had other campers that thought it'd be a lot of fun. And when John Waddell almost got in a fist fight on third base as to who was supposed to be there, that's when the Harry Potter theme was put to bed and never heard from again.
It looks better on paper than it did in person.
Yeah, but we finally got our act together, and special session is one of the most important ministries in the Diocese of Alabama. If you are a young person, or if you know a young person who wants a life-changing experience, who wants something that would really benefit him or her the rest of their lives, have them sign up to be on a staff at special session. It's like the young man from Mississippi who's now a writer and an artist and all those things. It really will and really can change your life. We have an outstanding young man who was both a camper and sort of a staff member all at the same time. My only concern about him is that I think Key exerted undue influence on him because he wound up going to Mississippi State. But here is Mr. Zach Woolley.
When I think of Key, there are several stories that come to mind, but one in particular. It had been a really tough year for me, and I had actually gotten sick while I was at camp. So I was in a bad place. And I rolled up to Key one day after staff meeting and said, you know, why do bad things happen? You know, I'm a good person. Why do I have to deal with all this? I think, I use profanity. But why do I have to deal with all this stuff? And he said, you know, sometimes we don't know. So Key and I sat there debating, discussing. Probably I kept him for over an hour, and we just went around and around talking about why bad things happen to good people. And in typical Key fashion, Key goes, well, this isn't really a theology point, but he goes, have you ever seen Forrest Gump? And I said, yes, sir, I have. And he goes, you know that part when Lieutenant Dan's up in the crow's nest and he's going, blow. And he goes, sometimes we all just need to do that. He goes, God doesn't expect us to be this perfect, contrite being with him all the time. You can say what you want to God, and God will hear you. And sometimes we're not going to know why God does everything God does. And that to me encapsulates the type of priest, bishop, human really Key is. Because you can come to Key with anything, and it can be the most obscure quandary that you might ever have, and Key somehow, some way will come up with some sort of satisfactory answer to make you feel like he's there for you. But not only is he there for you, but that God also understands you. And as someone with a disability, we need to understand that God is there for us. And that is what Key has done for so many people like me through his work with Special Session, and whether it be here or Mississippi. He has touched so many people's lives with different disabilities, and people who have disabilities, we often aren't touched by priests or bishops particularly. And the fact that he goes out of his way to show us kindness and to show us love really encapsulates the type of man that Key is. Key, I love you, and I hope you enjoy your retirement, but you better not become a stranger.
So Zach and I had that conversation one night, and I had set the curfew. All the counselors have to be in bed by midnight. And the conversation went till about 12:30 in the morning. I thought, well, I'm in violation of curfew. Let's continue tomorrow night. And he invited a couple of other campers to join us. And so we had like 4 or 5 people. And then the next night we invited any other counselors to join us just to talk about why people have disabilities, why bad things happen, why is there things that we would not choose in the world, and does God control that? Does God send that? Does God allow that? It's an interesting conversation, but Zach became a real big part of the community for Special Session, was a camper a few times and on staff a few times, and it's been a good friend.
Well, even though I had nothing to do with it, I am pleased to tell you that the Special Session Scholarship Fund has been renamed the Sloan Scholarship Fund. The effort will kick off in January. Thank you for bringing Special Session to Alabama and for involving me in it and helping it to become the great ministry that it is.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Well, we all know that Key did, as was predicted by several of these videos, become a bishop. He started as a bishop suffragan, a suffering bishop. A bishop suffragan is a bishop that assists other bishops, and the bishop that you assisted was the Right Reverend Henry Nutt Parsley.
Key, my brother, it's a joy to send a greeting to you as you prepare to retire as number 11 in the Diocese of Alabama. It was my privilege to preside at 2 conventions that elected you a bishop, first suffragan and then diocesan. You have served the diocese faithfully and well, and I salute you as your predecessor. We certainly had many memorable times working together, racing around Alabama to confirm, ordain, baptize, teach, raise money, advise, commiserate, cogitate, and sometimes prevaricate. My best memory of you early on was when I was visiting St. Thomas before you became our suffragan. And as I confirmed someone, my cell phone went off. And as I dug in my vestments to turn it off, you said to the confirmand, "Jesus calling." Of course, everyone in the church heard and enjoyed that moment. I also remember the time you persuaded me to dress up like Harry Potter at the celebration of the new ministry at St. Thomas. Now that is a memory for sure. And finally, I remember trying to give you advice as an old bishop about finding some of the more elusively located churches in the Diocese of Alabama, having given you an annotated book full of directions which I'd been using for a long time. You said, "No problem, I'll just put it in my GPS." At that point, I hardly knew what a GPS was. Nothing like improving on the episcopate. I'm grateful for our collegiality over the years. I'm grateful for your ministry. Bless you and Tana. Hope you'll enjoy being a retired bishop as much as we have. All blessings to you and all your family.
So after being the bishop suffragan, then of course you were elected bishop, which made you the boss. It made you the boss. And when I was first approached by the transition committee to do this tonight, and we were talking about who ought to send us videos if they were willing, I suggested that we needed somebody on the diocesan staff who worked for the boss to talk about your time as bishop. I don't know if she volunteered or whether she drew the short straw, but the person who agreed to do it is our producer tonight. She is our producer director, and I want to tell you what a wonderful job that she is still doing. But our video is from the Reverend Kelly Hudlow.
I first met Key in 2008 when he was a relatively new bishop and I was a relatively nervous nominee for Holy Orders. I came up to Carpenter House to meet the bishop the way that you are supposed to do, and I sat and waited, and then Key came out of his office, and here was this giant man who put out his big hand to shake mine, and then he said in sort of the quietest voice that I could imagine, "Hi, my name is Key. Come in and have a seat." Now, I was still nervous once we were inside the office, and I did my best to answer the questions that he asked of me. And at some point he said, "Well, Kelly, do you have any questions for me?" I managed to come up with the question of, "Well, how do you like wearing purple shirts?" He looked at me and laughed, and he said, "You know, purple doesn't go with anything." I went on to be ordained a deacon, and part of being a deacon is you get to travel around with the bishop when they go to parishes for visitations. That meant I got front row seats at confirmations and baptisms and all of the special services that happen when a bishop is there. I got to see how parishes pulled out all the stops to welcome Key and to celebrate him. And in those moments when Key was very much intended to be the center of attention, I got to watch and see how he would turn that attention to make sure that the people that were being confirmed or received or baptized were celebrated. And if it was a church that maybe there wasn't anybody for confirmations, Key always turned around and celebrated the parish and the leadership and the people that were there. He was always the center of attention, but he was so quick to give that attention away, to celebrate those that were around him. Traveling with Key also meant that I got to hear a lot of Key stories, often more than once, to listen and hear how stories took shape depending on the time and the location that they were told. Sometimes I would get to ride with Key to visitations, and in the car we would chat and sort of jokingly say, solve all the world's problems, and we would get talking about something and Key would always say, tell me if you've heard this one before. You can stop me if you have. And then he would start into a story. I have to confess, over the 9 years that I got to travel with Key and work with Key as the communications coordinator, I don't think I ever once told him, yeah, I've heard that story before, you don't need to tell it again. Sort of realized somewhere along the way that anytime Key was prompted to tell a story, I was going to hear something new or different in it. Not just because Key never lets the details or the facts get in the way of telling a good story, but because the way he listened and thought about things, the way he would shape that story, it would be what I needed to hear in that moment. One of my favorite Key stories that I heard many times, he used it in an address to diocesan convention and at ordinations and confirmations. It was a smaller story, was when he talked about the night before he was going to be ordained, and he was reading through the prayer book, and he gets to that prayer that's in the ordination service that talks about the church, that wonderful and sacred mystery. Except in that moment, he was so nervous that he read sacred as scared, that wonderful and scared mystery that is the church. Normally, there would be some Phil story that would go in there, and what he would challenge us to do is to stop being scared and to start being sacred. That's a story that sort of followed me around through my time of knowing Key. And as a bishop, Key, you've always told these wonderful stories. You bring this cast of characters and sages from your time in Mississippi and at special session, and you craft these stories that are about you, but they're big enough that we can find ourselves in the story too. And they're always stories that never keep the attention focused on you, but point us towards each other and the love that we should have, and point us towards God and the unimaginable grace and love of God in Jesus Christ. Key, I'm glad I never told you that I'd heard that story before, because I always needed to hear that story again, whatever it was, when you told it. Thank you for your stories, and thank you for inviting us to be storytellers along with you. I have so enjoyed working with you and for you and getting to know Miss Tina, and I can't wait to hear the stories that you still have to tell. Thank you, my friend.
So Kelly is obviously compassionate and graceful and sweet. And patient. Key's son, McKee, who's sitting here, he was very quick to say he'd heard that story before. And so one year he and his evil twin, Bartley Linton, made bingo cards up for special session training that if you, as soon as you heard all of the things on your card, you would yell, bingo, and I think all of us got bingo, didn't we, McKee? Several times. So you weren't always a bishop by yourself. You had help. Your assistant bishop, who is now, I guess, still the Bishop of Easton, Maryland, is the Right Reverend Santosh Murray. We invited him to record a blessing. And after about an hour, Kelly decided that she needed to edit the video somewhat. But anyway, here is the Right Reverend Santosh Murray.
It gives me great pleasure to come to you from Easton, Maryland, to my beloved sisters and brothers in the Diocese of Alabama on this very, very auspicious day. I came to the diocese having been called by Key to be his assistant bishop on the 1st of October 2012. And I believe the 4 years I spent in the diocese were some of the most rewarding, blessed, and thankful years of being a bishop. Lynn and I will never forget our time with the diocese, and more particularly, our friendship with Key and Tanner. Lynn isn't here with me today because I'm recording this message from my office. But she did ask me to convey to Key and Tanner her most special thanks and appreciation for this time we spent in the Diocese of Alabama. Key taught me what it means to be a creditable person, what it means to have the heart of a pastor, what it means to be forgiven, to be cool and composed, and not to take things seriously all the time, but to be foolish sometimes in one's own life and ministry, to be vulnerable, to allow oneself to be broken, and yes, allow oneself to be healed by the people who may have caused your brokenness. Thank you, Key. Thank you for allowing me to share time in your diocese. Thank you for allowing me to learn Episcopal ministry at your feet. Thank you for being there for me when times were tough and when times were good. Thank you for not giving up on me when I needed a home to continue my Episcopal ministry. You opened your heart, you opened the heart of the diocese to welcome this migrant bishop of color and to make Lynn and I feel as if we belonged. And we never felt in any way that we were ever strangers in a foreign land. We always felt that we did belong to Alabama because you made that possible, my beloved friend. And so, my brother, as I wish you all the best, you and Tanner, in your retirement, I wish to leave with you this prayer that I've picked up from the Celtic Book of Prayer, which I love so dearly. And it goes this way: May the Father of life pour out his grace on you. May you feel his hand in everything you do, and be strengthened by the things he brings through you. May his Spirit comfort you and make you strong. May his discipline you gently when you are wrong, and in your heart may he give you a song. May Jesus be Lord in all your ways. May he shepherd you in the length of all your days, and in your heart may he receive you and give you the praise. May the road rise to meet you, my friend, and may the wind be at your back, my friend. May the sun shine warm upon your face, my friend, and the rain fall softly on your fields, my brother. Until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hand. In Jesus' name I pray. And I wish you the very best and Godspeed as you transition into retirement.
Man, that would make a great song.
It would.
Yeah.
I can hear it.
So he's the only person ever to celebrate at Christ Church that I actually had to get up and go turn off the sound system. First of all, he needed no amplification, and second, I was afraid he was going to blow our speakers. No kidding. It was unreal. You may have noticed that I have in my hand a straight stick.
I did notice that.
This is not a crooked stick, but a straight stick. This is a gift to you. The people from Nativity Huntsville decided that you needed a walking stick to replace your crooked stick. And a young man, I say he's young, he's my age, Richard Hamner, who is a member of Nativity but grew up at Christ Church, Tuscaloosa, has an explanation of what this is all about.
Okay.
I'm Richard Hamner from Huntsville. We're Elaine and I are members, communicants at the Church of the Nativity, and we love our bishop who's retiring, and so we wanted to do something for him that would be meaningful. At first, we thought about making a crozier, and then we thought, well, no, wait, he's retiring, so he's not going to need a crozier, and I couldn't find the top shepherd's crook anyway, so we made him a walking stick. And the symbolism of the stick is that the wood is, the common name of the wood is baudarc. It comes from a French word, bois d'arc, which means the arc of the bow, and it was originally used for bows and arrows. And it's a tough wood, and it was used for flooring, so it's hard to machine, very dense. But anyway, it figures into his book, Jabbok. In the story, the Reverend Jake Jefferson left Buddy Hinton was the guy in the book, left him a walking stick made out of baudarc. And it was a gnarled piece of the wood from the tree. We actually got some wood from East Texas and had it machined, had it turned by a wood turner up in Huntsville. The whole thing comes apart, it's screwed together, so you can, if you want to transport it, for example, if you were traveling, you could take it apart. You can adjust the height, maybe remove a section and so on. But good wood, highly symbolic, and we had engraved on the top, the last brass piece up here, "The mysteries is ever before us." It's the last line in the book Jabbok, quote from the Reverend Jake Jefferson. I love that book. It's one of the few books I've read more than once.
Key, on their behalf, I am proud to present you with this walking stick. And now, even though she's going to hate me, I'm going to ask Miss Tina to come up on stage and receive a gift from the Diocese of Alabama. Destroy the microphone trying to get it out of here. Got it. There's steps right over there.
She was worried about her mask.
Well, just stay over there with him. Don't come over here and breathe on me. Tina, this is some stained glass from the stained glass artist Linda Munoz. She has done a lot of work around Camp McDowell. I helped her with a bench one time. I didn't really do very much because she's the artist, but at least I had a little hand in it. But she is a fabulous, fabulous artist. And this is supposed to be the sun. I can see it great on this side because the light's coming from there. I don't know if you can see it or not. But it's supposed to be the sun over water because we figure when you retire somewhere, you're going to find some water. And you can hang it in a window or against the wall or wherever. So on behalf of the Diocese of Alabama, I present this to you.
Thank you so much.
You can't see it because of the lights behind it, so too bad you miss out on it. It's beautiful from this side.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Okay. We have been letting people talk about Key, and I promised Key here at the end that I would let him say whatever he wanted to say, because after all, you're still the bishop.
The walking stick has a bishop chest piece.
Yeah.
You know how bishops look. That is so cool. And the stained glass is wonderful. We'll find a place to install that. Well, I have been dreading this night. because it's a very emotional thing, and as Kelly has noticed, I'm not, I don't always like to be the center of attention. I don't ever like to be the center of attention, and I have found myself being the center of attention a lot more than I ever should have. It's been a huge privilege, and I have loved almost all of it. I just turned 65, and I've been ordained for 39 and a half years, and I feel like it's time to step aside. I'm so grateful that we have hired a bishop who knows what she's doing, and I think the future is very bright in the Diocese of Alabama. Tana and I don't have any immediate plans to go anywhere. We'll be around. Both of our children live in Birmingham, and we don't want to get too far away from them. I'm trying to kind of steer away from saying anything that might make me cry. Which limits what I want to say. What I really want to say is thank you. First and best, I want to thank Tina. For putting up with a whole lot for a long time, and for giving me helpful advice like, don't knock that over. For her honesty, whether I liked it at the time or not. I want to thank McKee and Mary Nell. It really is a great privilege to serve as a member of the clergy. And there are sacrifices to be made, and I chose to make those sacrifices. Tana met me after I was already ordained, and married me anyway, and sort of chose that. I don't think McKee and Marinell ever chose that. It's just how it happened. But I'm so grateful to y'all for your love and for your patience, and for keeping me from taking myself too seriously. David, I thank you for your friendship, and all the people who are here. There are not many people here. I wish that there were. I wish that we didn't have to deal with this wretched virus, and we could have all come together in the pasture and had hot dogs and hamburgers and maybe some bluegrass music and celebrated. But I appreciate your tuning in from home and hearing some of the stories from my brother and both my sisters and my dear friend Cliff and my old friend Ralph and Kyle, who's still the troubler of Israel after all these years. All of them had stories that I am grateful they did not tell. I wrote a book about a guy named Jimmy Lee Washington. He was kind of the main character in Jabbok. He told me one time, all we are is our stories. And I think that's probably true. The Diocese of Alabama, the Diocese of Alabama is a huge part of my story, of our story. And I am forever grateful to all the parishes and all the priests and all the people in the pews and all the support and all the ideas. And I'm grateful for the work the Spirit of God has been able to do in these almost 13 years as a bishop. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the Spirit of God can do from now on. God bless you, all of you. Thank you very much. I love you. And I'm sure we'll see each other soon. Okay.
I want to thank the Transition Committee for inviting me to do this and for making all this possible, especially to Kelly and to George Ann, who worked so hard to make all of this happen. And I want to thank you for watching us wherever you are, and remind you that you can still go to our website, which is dioala.org, and look for the link to saying goodbye to Key and see how you can participate. It's not over. And we're going to bid you good night, but I invite you to continue to watch this little montage that Kelly put together of greetings from around the diocese. Good night.
Key Sloan was here. 3. Key Sloan was here. 3. We're gonna miss you, Key Sloan. We're now recording, but okay.
Fast got down.
Oh, fast down. All right, 1, 2, 3. How about them dogs? Key Sloan was here, and the church is still standing.
That's West Point, Mississippi.
All right. That was good enough.
Good enough.
All right.
Is it great or good enough?
It's good enough for Key.
Okay.
We're glad you came to Sweet Home, Alabama. Roll Tide!
And go Tigers.
Thanks for all you've done for us.
We
Love you, Key and Tina.
Happy retirement.
Key, for everything that you've done for us. We are going to miss you so much, especially your leadership and your wonderful stories. Blessings upon you and your family in your retirement.
Hey, Bishop.
Hey, Bishop Sloan.
Hey, you might remember us as Hayward and Kathleen from Curcio 217.
We have been privileged to hear a few of your stories a few times, but we have never gotten enough of hearing you tell us that we are good kids. We think you're talking to us, but that's some advice that we have taken and have given to our own children. Even when we're not the best parents, we try to remember to say that. So we're grateful for you and all you have done for the diocese and for us and for our family, and we wish you well in retirement.
Bishop Key, we are going to miss you, but we take with us. Wait, let's start over.
We should write what we're going to tag team to do.
Should have stuck with that, hats off.
This has been really well rehearsed.
I cannot do this plain. Bishop Key, we are going to very miss you, but we've got your stories. We've got them in us now, and we love them. We cherish all those stories. So we are at St. Joseph's are all saying, hats off to you.
Hands off.
Well, Bishop, you can see that we've really got our act together here at St. Joseph's. And we will miss you, but hats off. See you at Camp McDowell.
Thanks, friend. You've been a good friend to me all these years. I appreciate all your help for understanding a crazy guy like me. So hats off, Key.
Hats off to you from Marietta, Georgia. I'm gonna have some barbecue.
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas to you, Bishop Key. We will miss you. Good luck on your new adventure. Blessings to you, Bishop Key. Hats off to you.
We will miss you, Key, and we're sorry to see you go, but we know you're going to have a great time in retirement, and we love you. Thanks for all you've done for us. Hats off to you.
This pandemic has been a time when we really needed strong leadership, and you have just been wonderful, Key.
Thank you, Key, for everything. It's been great being a part of the diocese with you these past years. I wish you Godspeed.
Hi, Key. I just wanted to thank you
for all that you've done for me. You ordained me to the diaconate. You were there the day I got engaged to my beloved Murray. You called me that day when it was time to tell me it was okay to go to seminary. You have loved me so well. You've been an amazing bishop to the Diocese of Alabama, and how lucky we are. I've known you my whole life, but more so in the last 10 years as you walk through this process with me. So thank you, my friend. Good job. Thank you for always sharing God's love. You're an amazing person, and I'm so glad you're in my life. I love you, Key.
And thank you for your integrity, your storytelling, and your wisdom.
Thank you for your encouragement in steadfastly following Christ. Well done, good and faithful servant. Enjoy your retirement.
We would like to thank you, Bishop King, for your loyal service to Christ and to the Episcopal Church. Thank you for walking worthy of the vocation to which you've been called. And I personally thank you for my confirmation and introduction into the Episcopal Church by you 8 years ago.
We thank you for your leadership and many diverse programs you have been instructive on in our diocese and to St. Albans. Have a blessed retirement.
Bishop Sloan, your warmth and presence has been so instrumental in our diocese and St. Albans.
Your support of diocesan programs have been incredible for us in bringing up our children as fourth generation Episcopalians.
We treasure your incredible spirit and teaching us through your wonderful storytelling.
We appreciate your leadership and teachings to guide us in our walk with Christ in our daily lives, and we deeply appreciate the concern, care, and wisdom and the measure of guidance and protection you've offered the diocese during the pandemic.
You've been such a blessing to us. Many blessings in retirement.
Thank you, Key. You're the best.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your ministry.
Love you.
Love
Don't be
you,
a stranger.
Key.
Thank you, Key, for good sense,
For good humor,
for good sermons,
for good times at General Convention,
and best of all, your great stories.
Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the love of God surround you everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the love of God surround you everywhere, everywhere, everywhere.